So we get a lot of questions in the YouTube comments and on Facebook about who we are, what we do, what cars we own. We thought it was easier just to film a video together and clear the air and just let you guys know a bit more about us. So here we go. So first question is simple. There might be people out there watching this or listening to this right now. They don't know who we are. So first of all, who are we?
I'm Luke, and according to the internet, I'm middle-aged.
And I'm Luke's brother, because that's all I'm known at Quarter Park is Luke's brother, but my name is Geordie.
And my name is Paul, but my nickname is Broomy. So most people know me Broomy in most of the content. So that's who we are. Now,
No, actually, if you look at the comments, you're our brother.
I'm definitely we'll get to that. Yeah, we're apparently related, or they keep on thinking we're related. So next is how old? How old are we? How old are you?
I said I'm middle-aged. I'm in my 40s. How old are you?
Well, you don't want to give it away. You want to keep them guessing. You know what the funny thing is? I'm actually thinking, how old am I? Shit.
Get the abacus out.
Hang on, when was I born? No, we're 42.
You honestly had to think about how old you were.
I'm just a young and I'm only 38, but I get haircuts regularly, so you can't see all the grey hairs that are coming through now. So,
is it blown off yet?
He's one strong wing. Yeah, I saw that and I'm like, is that directed at me or you? One strong wind gust and my hair's going to blow off. It really hurt. Triggered me.
That was some serious RX-8.
Yeah.
Where it hurts.
Love triggering the RX-8 people out there. So one thing that's always common when people do videos like this or podcasts or whatever with automotive people is, how did you get into cars, or how did you get into the car scene? So,
you know, in all honesty, I actually don't remember. I was obviously like a lot of young blokes. You love cars,
yeah,
and you have the old Ferrari Testarossa
Lamborghini Countach.
We in high school we bought a lot of Tirana Power and Commodore Power magazines, and Ford was in the bin for us. Yeah. It was just Holden, Commodores and Tiranas, just non-stop Tirana Power magazines, SLR 5000s. But Ford, forget it, junk.
Yeah, it's interesting.
In high school, Carlo Jacobs, you might be watching this, his brother rocked up in an XA, was it bright orange?
I don't know.
And I saw Carlo hop in the back, and I'm like, who would get in the back of that thing? That is embarrassing.
Now it's a mad car.
Oh, yeah. To be honest, I was pretty one-eyed Holden growing up, as you know, I love the LS. But in all honesty, I'm not that brand.
No, I was going to say, when you're younger, you've got this, like, I was hardcore Holden. I hated Ford. Like, no, I wouldn't say hated them, but, well, I loved the Commodores and the equivalent of Falcon at the time. I just look at it and go, I couldn't stand the interior. Even though you were nowhere near old enough to drive, you knew what you liked.
Yeah.
And now I don't have any brand affiliation at all. I couldn't care about brands. I just don't get it now. Once you're older, it's kind of like, you mature past that, it's irrelevant.
I don't know how we got into the cars though. Our father had a Tirana LC GDR and basically sold it because it's a bit hard to put the two babies in the back of a two-door.
Yeah.
But he's not into cars.
And what did he sell it for?
He bought a Toyota Corona. Because you remember the 1970s, the big fuel crisis?
Yeah.
Fuel's going to go through the roof.
Late 70s hit, yeah.
So we didn't really get any influence off our family for cars at all.
No, nothing. A lot of them say, I don't know how you two got into cars. Where did it come from? Because no one in our even extended family is really into it.
Yeah.
Our uncle is, that's about it probably.
Yeah, I think my grandfather is, he worked at Toyota, at the Toyota plant all his life basically, and he obviously knew a lot about cars, so we used to talk about cars, but my old man's definitely not in cars. I'm not sure if he owned any sort of performance cars throughout his life, and definitely not automotive or mechanical minded. Growing up, the Ford versus Holden thing was very strong. There weren't many manufacturers back when we were younger and that. So I guess if I lent anywhere, it was Ford, and I don't know why. I think it maybe has to do with I follow North Melbourne in football, and in the AFL, so
you must be one of their six supporters.
Yeah, so it's always been sort of the underdog thing of hating the status quo.
Yeah.
And the status quo was Holden, so I gravitated towards Ford more so just because I hated the people who liked Holden because that was the mass. More people liked Holden, so I hated it.
Holden won Bathurst a lot, didn't it? So
in
that time,
in that time period.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I then going through high school, I used to read some car magazines. I've never been a real big car magazine person, but I was reading magazines with like there was one called Gemini Mania and Gemini Fever. It was just Geminis.
Gemini Fever,
And
I remember that.
That's where I found out about rotaries. There was a 12A and a 13B and like J-port and stuff like that, and there was no turbo stuff really back then. And they talked about these rotaries. I'm like, oh, it's a pretty interesting engine. It looks really weird, but there was no internet, so you couldn't.
No.
You were limited on the exposure you had. And I remember I bought my first car, and it was just a EA Falcon, and I did nothing with it for like a year, and then I got involved in a car audio club. So it's amazing how many people you talk in the automotive industry, how car audio is sort of the first entry into automotive, into modifying your car, so to speak. So joined a club there. Did a bit of that for about a year, and then after that, I started going down the performance path, and so, yeah, worked at a workshop for about 12 months, helping out a rotary performance workshop, and then yeah, just took it from there. It just developed from there. So that's pretty much how I got into cars through. Yeah, I'm not sure where the passion come from originally. I was just watching motorsport and just really loved it, and then yeah, car audio, and then sort of some mechanical work, and then yeah, now just doing stuff for myself. So. That's pretty much it. Next question we get a lot, we just touched on before, is are you related? The answer is no.
We're not.
So we move on to how did we meet? How do we know each other?
That is an interesting background, isn't it? Because we initially met Broomy way before we kind of, I could say, became friends with Broomy, with you. Like it's kind of like when we sort of started hanging around with Broomy, we were like, oh yeah, I remember meeting you, when was it? 6 years earlier?
Yeah.
Just had nothing to do. It was just because you were at a workshop and...
Yeah. So you guys did a lot of work with a workshop called Turbo Works and Rotor Works. So a lot of people probably remember that first video of like Vlad's 808.
Yeah.
Someone actually put that in the comments the other day saying they'd love to see a HD version of that come back. Probably not going to happen, because the car doesn't exist, and that film was on some kind of 8mm, so it's like 260p.
That was potato cam.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't as small as that. It's because of the internet at the time. I did that I was going to TAFE at the time.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And I was doing multimedia, and people are doing all these.
What was it about? It was like 576 by 312, is it?
No, 720.
Did it shoot 720?
Yeah, that's PAL 720. And then what it was though, you couldn't make videos that big because you're on dial-up. So you had to squeeze them down to these postage
I don't buy that you had a HD camera back then.
No, PAL 720 by 5. No, 720 is the width.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm getting mixed up.
even that's pretty big
not 720 HD.
No, but even 576p is like pretty big.
No, 720 by 576 is, I think, what is it? It's 4 by 3.
4:3.
Old school. That was
TV.
Old school DVD style spec video, right? You got to realize, you think it actually sounds bigger than what it is. If you put it on a HD palette in a video editor program, it looks like nothing. It's just a little square in the corner.
It's 3 pixels.
But what I was saying was, even though it shot that, I had to shrink it down to like a third of
so
that.
You could upload it
to make it like literally a 2 meg file or something back then.
Yeah, that's it. So
on a floppy disk.
We basically met through mutual. That's where I was the rotary part of that, of RotorWorks, the rotary workshop. I was helping out there for about 12 to 18 months, and I was often, because of that, going to racetracks, and you guys always filming, and then I started to film a lot of stuff too, just through mutual interest. More so, I wanted some content I managed the website for that business as well, the Rotary website. And I wanted photos and information to upload onto internet forums and stuff. So
I think I built that website.
Yeah, you built the original one, yeah. And so I was updating the website. So a lot of people back then weren't involved in web commerce and e-commerce and that. So I was constantly updating online forums and what we were doing and how we were doing it. Almost like the infancy of what we're doing now with project cards and things like that, and keeping people interested to drive business essentially.
And we also hosted that Rotary Oz, which then became Oz Rotary.
Yep.
We actually hosted it was originally called Rotary Oz.
Yeah,
it was on the bulletin board.
Bulletin board. Yeah. Yep. So
if you go back, he sold you a car. Is that right? Yeah.
So that's probably, I think that's where, so fullBOOST was you had the forum, then it moved to forums and that, and then you had that blue 323 that had had an extend port on or something.
Yeah.
That was just pieced together as a parts runner. You had that. I bought that off you, and I think from then it was. That was the first time we'd almost talked outside of a racetrack.
What did you do with that car? Did you modify it at all?
So insert Donald Trump worst trade deal ever. I swapped it for an XE Falcon. I always had my mind of XE ESP as like a great car and loved it.
Is that the worst deal in the history of worst deal trade deals?
Worst trade ever.
The worst trade deal maybe ever signed.
So this XE Falcon was like, so this 323 was clean.
No, just to back it
straight.
up, I was trying to sell that car for, I think I had it advertised originally for maybe $2,200-$2,300.
Yeah.
And I was getting people going, look, I'll give you $1,700, but it's not engineered. Where's the engineer certificate?
Yeah.
And he was basically the only person who came along and realised it's $2,000. It's got a 13B in it.
Yeah,
Like,
I think I needed an in-between car because I was building a VL, an RB30 Turbo VL at the time, and I just needed a car because my ZL had was almost finished. So I got the 323.
It had a few issues. It had a few fueling issues, I remember, but it was actually pretty reliable.
Yeah, it was very reliable, and it was straight, and it had like a few rust repairs on it, but it was pretty clean.
I did
or whatever.
those rust repairs.
Yeah,
on the back.
It was actually quite straight.
So it was pretty straight, but I straight swapped it for this XE, which was completely clapped out, rust throughout the rear end everywhere, standard XE issues, and then I ended up selling it to someone else, and they basically said the engine was blown. It was down a cylinder too. So, from that 323 for whatever a couple of grand it was, I think I ended up selling the XE for parts for a couple $100, if that. So, the worst. Which is why I hoard parts a lot now, and why I don't swap cars ever, and I don't trade stuff, and I don't look at Gumtree, because it's just a minefield of shit out there. Quite honestly, it's just people are selling junk and they're trying to get money for it and trying to persuade you that deals are good when they're not. So, we swapped that 323, and then I think I was going more and more to the racetrack. Then I started racing my own car, and then we probably started filming more because we were talking quite a lot. We had a similar circle of friends, and then we were talking a lot. Probably the advent of social media helped.
Yeah,
it's just,
of course.
You're always busy. I'm always busy with a day job. I know I'm one of these people that just talking on the phone. I don't think so. I don't talk on the phone to friends or family, and that it's like send me an email or send me a message, and I'll get back to you when I can, because I'm busy with a day job, and then I'm busy out here and busy with family and that. So. I think that helped start conversation. Then recently, 4 or whatever years ago, I said, we saw this old Project Redline come up for sale for not much, like next to nothing. And I said, I'd actually really like to get back into drag racing. Why don't we test the bed of seeing if we get some sponsors for the car and doing a project car. And since then, we've worked on a heap of stuff since then. So... it was very slow start to the relationship.
A lot's happened in the last 18 months though.
Yeah.
And the next 12 to 18 months looks pretty good too.
Yeah. Okay, so another staple of every single automotive review of who you are, whatever is, what was your first car, and what is, I guess, your greater car history to where you sort of at now?
Well,
do you remember?
Our first car was, we got a hand-me-down.
Being twins, we shared a car. So we hand-me-down red VC Commodore. I think it was an 80 model.
Did it have a Starfire in it?
No. No, it had a...
No, our parents bought it new after the Corona.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it had been in the family for ages at the time we got it.
Yeah.
What was it?
It was in good condition.
What size was the engine in it?
It was a 173.
There's a little 6-cylinder, the small one.
173. Yep. So what are they like?
A blue motor.
Blue motor, red motor, black motor.
Manual.
Bloody
like a 4-speed in it.
Yep.
So we learned to drive in that.
I stacked it.
Manual, no power steering. So at least it was a good car, kind of a heavy gearbox compared to, my God, if you put most kids in this car now, they couldn't drive it. They wouldn't be used to it, how heavy the steering is. But we learnt in that, and it was probably a good thing because it was a hard car to learn in. So everything else up to that, anything modern, was easy.
Yeah.
But he ended up stacking it.
Yeah, rear-ended some of it.
My first car was, again, because I wasn't really a car person back then, a real heavy car enthusiast. So I didn't really care what I was driving. I wanted something a bit newer. So my friends had VK Commodores or VC Commodores or whatever, and I got an EA Falcon, guaranteed X-Taxi. Had a bench seat, column shift auto on that, but it had EFI. It did single wheel peels like no man's business, because they tyres back in those days. Like I had like 195s on it or something.
This Commodore, you have to. you'd have to get it on full lock.
Full lock,
And basically rev it up as hard as you could, and the clutch would slip because the original clutch.
Yeah.
18 years old. Or
I
something.
remember the first time.
And you just squeal a tyre.
I remember the first time I learned, this thing can spin it. I was virtually just doing laps around the neighbourhood, turning hard right, dropping the clutch, and it would just squeal all the way through first gear. After about 10 laps, I think some lady's coming out of her house. What are you doing? And I'm like, And in reality, now you'd go, what? It could not even spin.
I remember when horsepower would fall from the sky. My car would come alive.
Yeah, I know. But those cars are actually, those old cars are a bit of a handful in the wet. Like,
it was a big barge. They had so much body roll in them because there was so much weight, and the chassis was like this. But
I'll never forget though when I had the accident and it went to that car was actually in quite good condition compared to other ones. It was very straight, and obviously the front had to be repaired. And I said to him, how much is it extra would I have to pay to get the rest of the car painted? Not that it's bad, but I said, so it looks as good. And I remember clearly the guy goes, you would never waste your money, mate, because these cars will never be worth anything.
Standard. Yep.
I continued the Commodore though. I don't know whether he gave me money or however it works, but I ended up buying a VH.
Yep. Just had 18 different colours of blue.
And obviously, when I bought it, it's like I had the blinkers on and didn't notice it. And I get it home, and obviously straight away realised it had an accident in the front. So the front had all been resprayed and looked mint, and the rest of the car was completely a different shade of. It was probably the same paint code, but one was 15-year-old paint, and one was probably 2-year-old paint. It was it's quite noticeable when you looked at it and went, what the hell? And I did the typical things, the clear indicators went in it, the SLE extensions on the back.
Of course,
I think I got a stereo put in it.
That was a big mod, like in the VC. Remember you'd go from the tape deck to putting in a CD player.
CD player, and then it had it was a bigger 3.3. It was an auto, and it went.
Dash.
I can't remember.
That was a big thing back then.
This Commodore, the older Commodore had a vacuum gauge. Remember that?
Yeah. The economy gauge.
Gauge. It would just fling around like it meant it had horsepower, and you just touched the throttle, and it just looked awesome.
It's just connected to engine vacuum.
It moved so quick, so it looked good. But the VH actually went a lot better. Yeah. I mean, it'd be hysterical if you drove it now, how bad it would be. But
didn't that have some extractors on it?
Yeah, it had the Genie extractors, the blue ones.
Yeah.
I didn't put them on. It had a few, and it had actually. I don't know if it had a cam. I just remember it actually was fairly lumpy on idle. This thing, but
probably had a vacuum leak.
Probably.
It did go a lot better than the VC.
And I think after 6 months, I some reason think I don't want this car. There was actually nothing wrong with it. I think I was just bored. I think I wanted something else.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know what. Did you still had the VC then?
Who got the turbo car first?
I did.
You did you?
Yeah. But down that route, what happened was I went to look at a genuine SS Tirana.
Yeah.
And it was a burnt orange one, so it was genuine factory. It wasn't like a mock-up. It had the LX hatchback, flares, everything.
Slapper.
4.2.
253.
And so that was the legal one on P plates. I wasn't allowed to drive a 5 litre on the P plates,
It
right?
had centre lines, flares, the works.
It was like 80 spec galore, right?
Yeah.
I remember it had a bit of rust in the seal and all this, and I'm like, I was just blinded by that. Oh my God, it's a Tirana. And it actually was nice inside and everything. Went and drove it. I think I took my dad along. Didn't even know what I was doing trying to drive it, even though I was used to Commodore. I remember taking it for a drive and compression lock up, second gear. Like the rear wheels locked up, and he goes, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. But anyway, put an offer in, bought the car, and then the guy rings me up, no, I need like another $1,000 for the roadworthy. I'm like, well, that's not my problem. You're selling with a roadworthy. In the end, got my money back.
Yeah.
So that would have led me down the V8 path, and I went down a very different path. And the funny thing is, months later, Luke ran into the seller.
Oh, it was a fair way later. It would have been at least 6 months later.
Still had the car and couldn't sell it.
Yeah.
So look at today's money. What year would have this have been? This would be like 95.
Yeah.
Could not sell this car for $5,000. Genuine SS Tirana, right?
No, he offered it to me for the same money with the roadworthy.
And we're like, no,
would he
don't
still
want
be
it.
interested? And I said, he's got another car.
Yeah.
But then what happened was, we were working with a buddy, working with a mate who, good old Glenn, he had an Extra Turbo.
N12.
Nissan Pulsar. This is like the weird two-door with stubby back thing.
Yeah.
And it had the good old what was the motor called? An E15. I think. A 1.5 little front-wheel drive 8-valve engine. It was like it's funny when you actually look at them. They're like a mini version of an RB30.
Very tiny. And that little T2 turbo on it.
Yeah. Physically, the engine looked like it was about a 1 litre though. Very small physically motor. But they actually would have been 7-pound boost, no intercooler. That's back then, right? And he just took me down the street and just kept pulling up to a stop and flooring first gear because of the gear ratio. It probably actually, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm blown away. This is so fast. I went straight away and bought a Pulsar ET Turbo, another E12. And that was...
No, the blue one.
Yeah, the blue one. That's what I'm talking about.
That was a bit of a showstopper.
I spent up big on this car, right? I spent like 12 grand on this N12.
Yep.
It'd been in Hot Fours magazine.
It had been a feature car. It had the big, back then, the 16-inch wheels. That was a big deal on this little car, right? It had an intercooler on it. It had the coloured Benetton steering wheel. Remember all that weird stuff? And it was actually a really nice paint job and everything. It had all been ice blue. How long did I own this car for? 4 months? 3 or 4 months?
Yeah.
Mucking around with him on the street doing something stupid. I completely... What did I do for... going way too quick.
Yeah.
Being an idiot, an 18-year-old. Wrote the car off in an accident, a single car accident, mounted a nature strip. You don't know. Now to be all over social media if this happened, right? I'd be in the
I went into a 7-Eleven on the other side of Melbourne the next morning to get an iced coffee, as you do. And it's just... Did you hear, mate? Did you hear Big PSI?
It had the number plates. It had the number plates Big PSI. That's why it was known, right?
So every woman thought the plates meant something else big.
big something, big Pepsi, I don't know. But anyway, that's how I got into the turbo cars through another guy.
Yep.
So looking back on it, I could have gone down the Tirana route as I idolised them as a kid, and I'll go down a completely different route.
Could have been big cubes instead of...
That had a built engine in it. So then we bought another... this is Geordie shouldn't go and buy cars. So he goes and buys another car in the rain.
In the rain?
Because he didn't have any wheels. I would just buy it, and then the next day he shows me the car, another N12, because in the meantime he bought the wreck back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I bought the wreck back because long story short, I had to go to court for this accident, right?
As you do, yes.
And I got the lawyers involved and, paid money and got
Dennis
off.
Denuta.
I rest my case.
That was sensational.
But in the end, I remember thinking...
Justice was served.
I remember thinking, yep, got away with murder with that one. But I didn't drive for 6 months. I was a bit shooken up after the accident. I didn't want to drive. Probably didn't have any money either at that age. But I finally then bought another Pulsar because I ended up putting the motor and a lot of the bits onto another Pulsar. And that car went on to have...
That was a lot quicker.
Oh, that was miles quicker. I remember this blue car, I'm not joking, took it to a... Now remember, these cars had, I think, 77 flywheel kilowatts. I remember it was modified. When I say modified, it's probably like 10 pounds an intercooler. It made 51 kilowatts at the wheels.
Yeah, but that didn't actually make sense.
It didn't. I remember going, how can it make 51 kilowatts? The car had actually run like
They run in the 14s.
Yeah, and I remember going, no way it's going to make 50 kilowatts. But anyway, a lot of that running gear and bits and pieces went on this other Pulsar. That ended up with a T28, a Microtech on it.
What colour was that one?
Burgundy.
Well, but 6 shades of burgundy with
I know,
and some.
Then I got the front of that one painted up, so the rest of it didn't match. But that one actually, I think from memory, it made up near 140 kilowatt at the wheels. And in a car that only weighs 950, what are they? They barely even pushed a ton, those cars. It actually went quite well. Being a single spinner with I was a tight ass and I used to put retreads on this thing. So it would have no traction to a 30.
A lot of people used to do that before the days of
Retreads.
Mickey Thompson ET Streets and stuff. Retreads were really soft and they'd hook up really well.
I did.
They'd be speed trialing
on this
them,
thing,
but
it was hopeless. It was, but it would have been pretty skinny tyres. But anyway, that's how I got into the turbo stuff.
Yeah. Who had the Cordia?
Well, yeah. So then, because he bought that, I thought I'm gonna take it from here to here. So you know what I'm getting? VL turbo.
Yep, of course.
So I'm like, this is just. Don't worry about this petty Pulsar nonsense. I'll get a VL turbo. Open up the trading post. They're like back then. They're like 22 grand.
Yeah.
And everyone wanted a Calais.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it went on from the VHSLE two-tone.
Yep.
The next step was the VL Calais. So, and that's why a lot of people had the...
So back then, this is like 96. So you're paying 22 grand in 96.
Yep.
When you're talking back then, you might have only cleared $350 a week.
Yeah.
Working sort of a labouring job. So I'm like, I can't afford it. What are your options? And then there was a Starion.
Yeah.
But they were hard to find. A good one. Or a Cordia. And what happened at the time was I was going to buy sorry, I ended up buying the Cordia because there was no imports.
Yeah.
And I remember buying it thinking, this thing goes like rubbish. What the hell's wrong with it? I thought it'd go better. It should be turbocharged. Yeah, that someone's telling me it should be as quick. But because he's at the time, you're like, oh, you didn't know enough about it, or whatever. And then I took someone for a ride, and they're like, there's something wrong with it.
Yeah, that's right.
We put a boost gauge on it. It was making like nothing. It'd rev out. It'd make like half a pound or 1 pound of boost.
Yeah.
And then I took it to a turbo shop, and they said, look, we can't do it, but your cat's blocked.
Yeah. Okay.
So I gave it the old Thomastown high flow.
Broomstick?
Punch that out. Punch that out.
It's a retrospective EPA law.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to jail.
Took it out on the road. I was like, holy moly. Like, it honestly was like I just put a 350 dual two-stage hit in it. Like,
yeah. So you've got a whopping, about 8 pound boost? Something?
Yeah, probably. In the end, I bought an intercooler for it and exhaust and did some other things. I owned other cars in between, and then I had issues with lifters in it. I broke 2 lifters, so I pulled the head off a few times. I actually owned that car for 10 years, but I didn't.
Why did you get an engine replaced? Was it just tired?
Oh, well, I did 20,000 Ks. No, I was in Mexico and had just a bit of a run with another car, and
street racing is
and they sort of had me, and I'm like, I should be able to beat that car. What's going on? And it was using a bit of oil, did a comp test on it, 60 psi in one cylinder, 90 psi on the other one. I'm like, this engine's cooked. Put a new engine in it, but because you don't know anything about cars, you haven't changed anything. Like the turbo's still the same, all the other stuff's still the same. So you put the brand new engine back in the car, and you're like, it didn't go one bit better, to be honest, than the cooked engine. If you just knew some stuff, if you did some minor things back then, your car would have been so much quicker. Yeah. But the big issue, like the big thing let his car down in hindsight, like it had a standard ignition system on it.
Yeah.
So like we were pushing up past 25 pounds of boost at one stage, and it was just...
I remember it had a boost problem. I was driving to Heathcote one day. It should have been on about 6... I think it should have been on about 18 pound. And obviously the actuator was playing up. Maybe the hose had come up or something. But basically, it was, as the old school term was, it was hose off, right? And I remember just leaning on the throttle up a hill, and it's just maxing 20 pound on the gauge. And I didn't want... And it's just fueling up, because it was tuned just to go on full max on the 20 pound setting. But I remember going, my God, this wakes up. But... I mean, in hindsight, I sold that car for peanuts because I was young and I needed the money to go overseas. Now, if you just put just an ignition system on it and ethanol, you'd probably make no problem, a good turbo. You'd make up 200 kilowatts to the wheels, and it would, even though you don't really have a gearbox in it, it's just a few simple changes like that would wake an engine up like that.
I think we've been talking long enough about these 80 shit boxes.
Yeah. You guys went down that route of the turbo 4s. I was just thinking about this the other day. I've never owned a 4-cylinder in my life.
Really?
Never owned a 4-cylinder in my life. And the VF is the first 8-cylinder I've ever owned, I think, except for that XE, but I don't think that was on all 8, so can't really count that. So my history of cars, I had EA Falcon with a bench seat for my first car, and then I think it was about 12 months, almost to the day of owning it, I just said, this is boring, it's completely standard, I need a performance car. And I think I was watching 1999 Jamboree coverage on Fox Sports, and Chris Dalton's R100 was doing wheel stands, and they said, this thing's got a rotary in it. And I remember those Gemini magazines, the things with rotaries, and I said, I have to have a rotary, because the commentator was saying they're so cheap to modify and they're so cheap to make go fast. You can probably competing against the great Melbourne weather here. Hopefully you can hear us.
At the moment,
so I had to have a rotary because I was your standard quintessential rotary owner, tight ass. So massive tight ass. I wanted performance for little outlay. I wanted max performance, no money. Rotary, perfect. In hindsight, not so perfect. So I went and got a Series 2 RX-7, completely standard, rock, totally stock. Had the all the emissions gear on and everything. Had a 12A auto, and this thing was a nugget. It was slow. Like I think they run like mid-17s quarter mile. It was slow as hell. I didn't know much about the rotaries back then. I used to pull the choke out and then just go full throttle, no warm up. Get straight on the freeway and just gun it. And then halfway through the freeway, I decided to put the choke back in and go. And I blew that engine up after about 4 months. And I put a new engine in it. And then I drove it for about another year. And then it was still slow and boring. So I sold it to a mate because it had a new engine in it. It was mechanically really good and clean. So I sold it to him. And that's when I got the dream car, or dream car for back then, was a VL Calais Turbo. So burgundy over silver, polished Calais rims. It was mint. I owned that car for 2 weeks and it was stolen, and it's never been seen ever since. So after that, I went down a pretty troubled path with cars. I went and bought a ZL.
Jeez.
This is getting horrendously loud.
That's pretty bad.
So when I bought a ZL, because I thought turbocharged 6 cylinders are like mint, and I'll do one of those, and then that was just a complete nugget, so never did.
A ZL. That's like a
ZL,
house and land package.
It was known as HMAS Fairlane because it was so big, but it served me well. I think I put oil in it every fourth fill, but I didn't have any mechanical issues with it. I learnt to do things. It was really the first car where I sort of learnt to do things myself on it. So I think I replaced the alternator, replaced the water pump and a few things. So started to learn mechanically what to do on cars. And then, eventually I started building another VL. But just before that, I had an RX-4 Coupe, which was great. Had a Bridgeport in it. Then I turbocharged it. That was on straight gas, which was a thing people sort of did back then as well. And my VL was also on straight gas. So that's when I really started to do stuff myself. So
I remember going I went in that car a couple of times, your RX-4.
Yeah, so the RX-4 went 11.9, 121, and it was a genuine street car, like street. So for back then, I mean, it didn't get off the line. I think it ran like 2,660 foot, so it could have run a 10 with decent tyres or whatever that, ET streets that people have these days. And I drove that every day. That was my only car. So it's not like people who have street cars these days or 10-second street cars that get driven on the weekend or whatever. This was, 121 mile an hour street car that was my only car. I drove it everywhere. Drove it into the city in daily traffic and that. So it was a pretty quick car. And then, I moved on. I got another VL. I drove that for a fair few years. I then had an Aristo, so 2JZ. 2J was the neck snapper, so it had like a modified valve body in it, and it hit very hard in gears, and it had a two-way LSD, so it was a bit sketchy around roundabouts. But that was a really, really comfortable car to drive. It was really nice. And then after that, I had company cars. So my daily drivers were like just company cars basically, and it wasn't until this and the Ford F350 recently that I've had anything. And I had an FD RX-7 in between, and I really didn't do much with it. I think I did a couple of days at Winton, but that's been about it. So I've been pretty entrenched in rotaries as my performance cars for about the last 6 or 7 years, and that's pretty much all I'd really have going forward. I don't see myself doing Barras or Turbo 6s or whatever and that sort of stuff going forward. I love rotaries, that's what I do. I think I'll stick down that path. So that's sort of car history. I'm just reading questions here at the board. What cars do you own now?
Well, after what I was talking about before, quickly I had a VTEC Honda. Literally bought the car just so I wouldn't spend money on it because it wasn't turbocharged, so it allowed me to save for a house, get a house. Years later, very nice car though, years later I got rid of that, bought the GSR just because I remember them as when I was younger and I've had it for a long time, but anyway. That's obviously never been a daily, it's always just been a car on the side. The dailies have been, I had an N14 Pulsar with an SR20 factory, full granny spec this thing. I bought it with no Ks on it. That was actually a basic car, no air conditioning, but it got me around. It actually drove quite well. Yeah. Finally upgraded to something better and bought a Mondeo XR5. That was a big car. It was very, very well appointed, like heated seats, the whole works. I had that for about 4 years. And then recently this year, I've finally thought, no, I want more of a driver's car. And I bought, after seeing Luke's little Renault for good value, I bought like the newer spec one. Worth a lot more money, but it's a lot newer car. And as much as we cop it with the Renaults, it's actually a really cool driver's car. It's a type of car, to be honest, I think I'd like to just even take the Sandown to cut laps in it because it's designed for that. Even though it's a daily, that thing's designed to go around corners, not to sit in traffic.
You can see on camera my roof leaking here straight into the film, but Anyway, so and what have
That
you?
rain is starting to get heavy. Is it landing on the lens?
No, it just dripped straight down into my
If you
pan.
can't hear the background noise for audio listeners, it's starting to pour down here.
Yeah, can't do much about it.
Not
It's
much we
Melbourne's
can do
probably
about
going to
it.
be
You
here
got
for
no
the next
idea.
half hour, so.
No idea if this is ever going to come out.
Yep.
Your dailies.
Well, I've got the greatest car of all time, the Renault. Couple bit of grief about that.
Hang on, you had a Honda too, though.
I've had other cars, but I'm not
Yeah.
going to get into that crap. Yeah, the Renault. I bought that actually because I just wanted a cheap daily driver.
You wanted a run around, yeah. It's
And I've had a few Subarus. I've still got that black one, obviously, the wagon. That's actually a very good condition. The person I bought that, I've spent a lot of money on that, and I'm not sure what to do with it. I'm not like tied to the car. I don't mind driving it, but it's not the sort of car, like I don't like leaving it in shopping centres and...
Yeah.
You
You're
know,
almost at the crossroads. Do you get rid of it,
yeah.
or do you go down the path of modifying it?
Because he'd sort of done, I guess, what you could do to it without melting it, and it's at that point where if you really want it to make it go faster, it needs an engine, a turbo, a fuel
Gearbox
system.
might be.
The driveline's actually
driveline's
good
good
in
in
the
that
car.
car.
That's
Yeah,
got
yeah,
STI
yeah.
drive
Yeah,
on it,
it's,
yeah.
It's good.
But that's where it gets expensive, and that's why Barras and LSs are so cheap, because Barras only cost 2K to run 9s, so it's very affordable.
Eights, 2K for eights.
Eights. And an LS, I mean, you can just do an exhaust tune and then it can make, decent 400 sort of plus horsepower or whatever. Whereas, these things are WRXs.
Most cars, after about 3 years, I get bored and I move on
Yeah.
to something else. I've had that car for...
Unless you do major changes to it, like, if you put another 200 horsepower in it, you would go, oh, this is cool.
Yeah, but I'm sort of at the crossroads what to do with it. But part of me is like, I wouldn't... Do I build something else? I've been getting on online and having a look what's available. Everything... Because there's nothing to buy new, like we were touching on earlier, and something else, but if you want to buy something second-hand from the 90s, like I was trying to find like an MR2 Turbo, the SW20,
that's a pretty rare car here, really.
You can't even find them.
No.
They're not, and the ones that people who have them don't sell them, and then when they do come up, they're bloody expensive. So it's like, you've got to outlay a lot of money to buy the car before you've even modded it.
Yeah, so that's so at the moment I'm driving VF Commodore. You might see that video, us running through that. I've got F350. You would have seen episodes. Hopefully, if you follow the channel on Project Redline. It's a tow truck. I've got this Project Redline here, Mazda 626 13B turbo. I've also got an FD-RX-7, which is Flintstone powered at the moment. So it sort of blends into next question, which I guess is future cars or future project cars. What do we have planned? What do we want to talk about?
Looking about putting an LS into an RX-8. That's probably my ultimate dream car.
Oh, I don't have any plans on selling my GSR only because it's not worth a lot of money for what it is. It's not. I wouldn't get that much, and to kind of. I have thought about upgrading and getting something like an Evo
8. I remember at one stage...
No, I'd still go an Evo 6.
Well, at one stage you said, I was going to get a new Evo. I said, then you'll just be like every other Evo at the track. Like, your car's not perfect by any means, but at least a lot of people come and look at it because you don't see
I
any
think
of
it's one of those things, though. It's weird. I'm not that, like, worried about, we can pull it out and put a decent bottom end in it because the engines are actually very strong. Like, you put rods and pistons in them and they'll survive all day, but then the drivetrain is weak. It's not really designed to handle a lot of power, especially if you start doing circuit days in it and stuff.
I'm not sure if I want to keep the VF or run with it or get something different. In terms of project cars of that, F350 will stick around. What we do with the engine of that, I don't know going forward. Project Redline, holy moly, this rain's getting heavier. Project Redline will stick around in the short term. However, the only reason I have a 626 is because it was cheap, and it's still cheap, but this thing's been around a lot of years and it is extremely rough. So I know people that like certain model variants or live that whole thing of that. So there's people that love 626s. I'm not attached to it at all. It was just a cheap car to put an engine in and go racing for not a lot of money and quite easy to do it. I still have the FD. I don't know what happens with the FD, but we'll wait and see, I guess. So.
Hey, minute, listen to this flaming rain. So, we have no idea if you can hear us. This rain is like torrential.
If you can hear us, send help. I think the next project car might be fucking Noah's Ark. This is ridiculous. We've got to push on. We've got limited time. It actually takes us into our next question, which is this your full-time job? So for me, it's a quick one relating to Full Boost. It is not my full-time job. I have a normal day job. I am really just content contributor, do a bit of social media stuff and do some of the back-end marketing and some sponsorship sort of stuff, and that's about it. That's my contribution to Full Boost. So
It may surprise you, but I don't work Full Boost either. I do it on the side. My day job is I work in IT, so that keeps me busy all day. And basically, I film at the racetrack on weekends a lot, and then I obviously film with Luke a lot on the weekends, doing other things like dyno days and looking at footage, handling merchandise. So it's really just Luke is the one that does this kind of work all day. Now we're being attacked.
Yeah, so I do full-time at the moment. My background is photography, but I don't do much. I still do it for some clients, but that's it. So I mainly do video production is my main gig, but a lot of that's not on Full Boost. I do video work for selected people who I get along well with, and I like what they do, but I try not to take on too many new jobs. I'm so time poor.
yeah, cool. So we talked about cars before and that. Is there a dream car that you would, if you could build, you would build? So
I've been asked this so many times, and to be honest, I've never actually thought about it. I still like the Datsun 1600s. But like we were saying before, everything's just expensive. And unfortunately, it's actually cheaper just to buy something that someone's built.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to pay what it really costs. To pay what it really costs for just a paint job is, you know, you might be able to pick up someone's project for say 40 grand, whereas that car could have cost them 100 grand to build. So in reality, that's probably what I'll do in the future.
I'd love to have something, I know it sounds weird, something that's 5-cylinder all-wheel drive.
You're right, that sounds weird.
Balls out. I just love the sound of a 5-cylinder.
Like an old Audi S2.
I don't know if it has to be an Audi.
I know you like the Lancia, but
Yeah,
they're
but-
4-cylinder.
Yeah, but even if you stuck up, I'm not saying it has to be like a factory 5-cylinder, but a 5-cylinder in something. Like, it doesn't matter if it's an engine transplant, because I'd prefer to have a car that you actually like the look of everything. But I just reckon a 5-cylinder, it's like that baby V10 sound. And it's a very unique sound, as in not many manufacturers even make them anymore. Unique, that's all. But that's I think going down that path's expensive.
Yeah, and my one's expensive too. So I mean, realistically, an RX4 Coupe, sort of that Pro Street look, like a 275 or whatever, rear tyre, 20V turbo or whatever. But again, I mean, if you were to buy a finished one, it's 100 plus, 130 grand. I will never spend that kind of money on a car. Unless I win Tats Lotto, I'm never spending that kind of money on a car. I just don't have the time to enjoy a car. It's why I don't have a street registered car that's fast either. I don't have time to enjoy it. I mean, look now, it's pouring rain, 8 months of the year in Melbourne, and the other 4 months a year it's roasting hot. These cars are.
Can you believe we're
archaic,
recording this? This is December in Melbourne, and it's like torrential rain, and I'm wearing a beanie.
And it's freezing in here. Like,
It's getting colder and colder. It would easily be. It feels like it's about 8 degrees now, which is like 45 degrees Fahrenheit. It's cooked. This is summer in Melbourne. So.
And then the good old Melbourne tomorrow could be 43.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. So, last question. We'll wrap this up. Is what's next? I guess for Full Boost in 2020. So, something we haven't done a lot of is, I guess, collaborations with maybe other YouTubers or other channels out there, other people. And something we can probably touch on is we're very Melbourne centric. We grew up in Melbourne. We film in Melbourne. We'd really like to reach out to and cover some stuff from interstate. So Queensland, WA, New South Wales have big racing scenes and tracks that are open a lot too. So there's, I guess, possibility with something like that. So if you're out there, you have decent camera gear, motorsport awareness, and you can actually hold a camera and film something quite well.
And you don't film vertically.
Yeah, and you don't hold it. You're not filming just on an iPhone vertically. If you can do all that, and you're willing to give us the footage, we'd love to work with you. We'd love to get that footage off you and to run, to be able to bring our audience, not just Calder Park and Heathcote drag racing, but Sydney Dragway, Willowbank, and Kwinana Motorplex are racing that. So if you're someone out there that has a keen interest and you'd love to follow to maybe build your career in photography or videography, and you want people to know who you are, we'd love to help you blow up too. So get in contact with us. You can send us a message on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and we'll respond definitely. So,
Broomy, I think we've got to leave it. That's it, because this rain is out of control. It's actually about to drip on the camera.
This is like monsoon spec rain.
This may be like the Pauline Hanson assassination film. You may never see this video because this could be so cooked you just can't hear the audio, and we may cut it. We may have to do it another day. If not, well, this has been our mini podcast vlog on who we are and what we are. And yeah, if that's it, we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for watching, and continue to watch the channel. I think you're going to see a lot more in it, especially in 2020.
Yeah, the biggest thing is please share our videos. So it's one thing to watch content. It's another thing to like, comment, and share it on your social media platform, which really, really helps us grow. So if you guys could do that, every time you see a YouTube video, just post it on your Facebook page. Scroll down and give it a like when you see it. It really, really, really helps us. So we don't ask for money through Patreon. We don't have a channel sponsor that's kicking in dollars to us. We're doing this on our own back. We'd really appreciate your support and your help. So thanks a lot.
We did ask for money on Patreon, but no one gave us any.
No, that's right.
So I got rid of it.
Yeah, what's the use? We never really pushed it, so we don't want to go down that path as well as begging people for money, and then you're beholden to do all that stuff, so whatever. Yeah, just like and share it, and that'll really help us. So until then, catch you next time.